All right, welcome back to the channel. Gonna get right into this Mamdani investigation. Now, basically, I'm gonna look at his racial equity plan for New York and see what he's talking about. But it's clear that the public facing kind of expression of what this is, they're trying to deny that it's a racial thing when it clearly is a racial thing. And we can see here in this first interview where he's with Trump and an interviewer asks him a question, and he basically completely flat out denies that his plan is going to be racially discriminatory, which it is.
City that is not only fair and equitable, but also one that every New Yorker can afford.
Franklin University makes it possible.
Policies as well that Mayor-elect Mamdani talked a number of times about on the campaign was shifting the tax burden for property taxes from what he called minority communities to white-based communities and putting more taxes on white people. I also noticed that in your acceptance speech you didn't mention anything about America or Christians or white people in general, and so I didn't know if that was one of the policies that you guys had spoken about.
We focused on affordability. We focused on the cost of living crisis. What I will say is that I am very much interested in property tax reform because what we see right now in New York City is a system that is so inequitable that it can't even stand up in court. And the president and I spoke about the importance of not only building more housing, but also making sure that regulation of housing is something that is manageable to actually get through and not the cause of yet another weight that we see in our city.
That was like an expert deflection. He didn't mention race or like economics really at all in that. It's kind of funny. Like, he's a professional for sure.
Continuing this idea of race-based property taxes.
No, to be very clear,
That's what you said.
no, the use of the term was a description of neighborhoods, not a description of intent.
So you intend to tax the whiter neighborhoods more?
No, we intend to create a fair property tax system because we want to.
So he asked him, is it racially based? And he said no. He said no 3 times. He said, so your intent is not to tax white people? He said no. No. Right. Okay. That's a complete lie because the entire thing is based on, it's called the citywide racial equity plan. And then here, even in the statement, they're basically saying, there is no economic justice without racial equity. And then this person is the deputy mayor for economic justice, which could just mean racial justice because you can't have economic justice without racial justice. They're basically saying that racial equity and economic justice are synonymous. So then racial justice follows that you can't have one without the other. That's what they're saying, right? And so you can see that he's clearly lying there when he's saying that it's not race-based in any way. It's definitely race-based, right? The whole entire plan is called equity and racial justice, right? And then this person is the mayor of economic justice, right? So here's another clip.
The inequities in this city, the racial inequities, are stark. We are talking about findings that have shown that the wealth of a median white household in this city is more than $200,000, while that of a black household is less than $20,000. This is not an indictment of any one New Yorker. It is an indictment, however, of policies and politics that have persisted for far too long.
See, like, it's just impossible to deny that this is a racially based policy, which is basically, in modern America, it's very un-American to do a racially based or gender-based policy. It's either you got to do a policy that works for everybody or works for nobody. Like, you can't just be like, oh, well, you know what? Black people and Latinos, we're going to do a plan for them at the expense of white people. And they even give statistics saying that under their, qualifications of who qualifies as a poor person or who has economic injustice upon them is like 40% of white people in New York. qualify under that same standard of whatever they're qualifying as being economically insecure or whatever it is. We'll get into that in a second. But basically, so they're even making the claim that it's like 60% of black people, 60% of Hispanic people, and 40% of white people fall under this banner of being poor or whatever they're calling it now. But yet there's no policy in place to direct any of the funds to poor white people. It's all based on race, and it's all based on whether you're either black or Latino, basically. And there's just no denying it. They got a 300-page report right here. Right, going through the whole thing. On page 13. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but they go through like the whole history of slavery and black people moving up north and all that stuff. So we can see here, that they have these 3 offices. The Office of Racial Equality. It's not racial though. No, none of this is racial. None of it. None of it. Like you saw when he was standing next to Trump. He's like, oh, race? No, never heard of race. And a Commission on Racial Equality. Now, what's really interesting is that they're actually using AI. This is what's crazy. I don't even remember where that is. To get this true cost of living thing, where they basically say that they're creating a true cost of living measure to track the cost of meeting essential needs. They're basically using AI to scan everybody's like finances and figure out who's rich and who's poor and who has too much and who, like, it's ridiculous. It's straight up communism, right? It's just straight up communism. See, then they go through the whole history of slavery. They don't talk about any of the stuff like that white people did for the country. It's just slavery, and then, George Floyd, Eric Garner. Okay, maybe you shouldn't be killed for selling Lucy's outside the store, but yeah. There's just a lot of history stuff, like how we got here to this point. And it's all based off of race. You see it's just everywhere, racial justice. And then he's like, oh, it's not about race. This has nothing to do with race. Like, I'm sorry. I mean, if I was a white person, I lived in New York City, I would leave like immediately. This is crazy. They're talking about how you have to do basically like racial training, like anti-racism training and all that. It's all the stuff. It's all the stuff that we've all been talking about. They got the anti-racism training, a bunch of other stuff. All right. So now this is like a speech that they were giving about 3 months ago about the racial equity plan. And now this guy is claiming that he's the highest ranked black elected official in New York City. And he basically presents the argument that's the main crux of the worldview. Like all the other stuff that they're doing, like around the worldview, it's like, if you can't disprove this argument, which it seems like it should be easy to disprove, but the way that their worldview is structured, they always have like this circular argument to like eliminate anything that you say from the argument, right? So we'll see what he's saying first, and then we'll get into the argument.
We cannot change the mission of Medgar Evers or change who it was for. So I want to make sure every time that bubbles up in the community, we want to make sure we push back on it. I'm also not just here as the highest ranking citywide black elected. I'm here as a New Yorker who has cared about these issues for a very long time, following and being inspired by people like Bob Law and Roger Green and Esmeralda Simmons and so many others who have been working on these issues long before I ever thought about becoming an elected official. And Afia, it's awesome to see you in this mission. I know that this is not a joke when you're in it, so that you're not going to stand up here and talk about things that are not real. And Jennifer Jones-Austin, thank you so much for pushing the true cost of living, because that has been an issue for a very long time. And let's be clear, when 62% of New Yorkers can't afford to live here, that's not a crisis on the margins. It's a citywide emergency. What this report confirms is what communities have been saying for generations. Inequality in New York City is not accidental, it's systemic, and it's racial. And I always want to say,
see how they're trying to like frame it as if almost everyone in the city is under this economic injustice. If they're saying, oh, well, 62% of people in the city can't afford to live here, and it's like the other like top 20%, and it all happen to be white people that are causing the injustice, it's going to cause a big problem for that small percentage of white people, right? And it's like, this is like the kind of main point though, that it's not accidental, right? Because when you have the right-wing worldview is like kind of a more biological determinist worldview, where it's like, okay, the reason why a hawk flies higher than a pigeon is because the hawk's biology, right? It's not because the hawk is like doing some type of injustice to the pigeon, right? But in the left-wing worldview, a hawk and a pigeon should be able to fly at the same height because they both have wings. They both have wings. And so therefore, the only reason why the pigeon can't get up to where the hawk is because the hawk keeps on pushing the pigeon down, right? And so getting past this argument is like basically the crux of the whole leftist worldview, right? Where it's like, no matter what you say, you can point out, tall people, right? And say, hey, look, tall people are better at basketball. And they'll say, yeah. And you go, okay, well, skinny people are better at swimming. Yeah. And then you'll be like, okay, guys with big muscles are better at weightlifting. Yeah. Smart people are better at making money. Economic injustice, DEI, racism. Like, that's literally where the argument goes. It's just like their brain short circuits. You can talk about how come black people are in the NBA and there's no white people in it. How come all the Kenyan runners, all the world-class runners are Kenyan. But as soon as it gets to them making money, because that's what our capitalist society is based on, it's like, yeah, you could be the world's best, you could be a good basketball player, but unless you're the world's best basketball player, you're not really making any money, right? Unless you're the world's best swimmer, right? But like I said before, you can just be an accountant and be pretty wealthy, right? You don't have to be the best accountant in the world, right? But it's a certain trait that certain groups of people have more of that trait, just like the running, but it's like nobody cares, because once you start talking about making money, which it affects everyone, unlike playing basketball or playing hockey or being a good gymnast, right? Then all those arguments go out the window, and they just go straight to, it's racism, you're keeping us down. There's no innate differences between the groups of people, right? Blank slateism, right?
You have to mention race in the solution, because race was mentioned in creating the problem in the first place. The federal poverty line has been lying about how hard it is to live in this city. The true cost of living finally tells the truth New Yorkers feel every single day. And we also know that plans don't change lives, actions do. And so this is a very, very welcome framework and a way to start to figure out how we get that action. We also have to hold agencies accountable to deliver results in addition to the reports. We want to make sure that our budgets are reflective of what's in this report. Millions of New Yorkers are doing everything right and still falling behind. If our policies don't work for them, then our policies are broken, or perhaps they're working how they were designed to work. When most of our children are growing up in
See, again, he's suggesting that it's a purposeful, keeping down of black people, even though only 30% of the inhabitants of New York City are white. They still manage to keep down the 70% of non-white people in the city. You see, it's like, it's at the point where there'll be like 2 white people left in New York City, and they'll be like, you see those 2 white people over there? They're the ones keeping everybody. You would be like 10 times richer if that one white guy wasn't living here. It's like, it doesn't matter how big the population is of non-white people, they'll still say that it's caused by white people.
and families that can't make ends meet, that's not just an economic issue, it's also a moral one, and it demands urgency from all of us. I want to also thank the people that were mentioned, in Linda Tagani and Kirsten Foy and the Commission Advisory Committee, also the people who voted for this in the first place, that they understood how important it was to talk about these issues. And I want to make sure that we're lifting up all the communities that were mentioned who are burdened by a system that's created for the wealthy. But I do want to make sure we lift up particularly black communities. Sometimes they get left behind when we start talking about a lot of issues. It is important to understand that anti-blackness is rooted in so many of these things by design. Even when we mention other communities, if we're honest, anti-blackness exists in those. And so those other communities, but
Basically, he's talking about like Latino people and Asians. So he's like, yeah, I mean, even though we're supposed to be working with the Asians and the Latinos because they're minorities too, they don't like us either. It's just like the whole thing is just this ridiculous, like race, weird, like weird race thing.
whether it's women or immigrants, when you look at the numbers in the black communities, they are doing the worst. And anti-blackness is designed to make sure that we cannot mention black communities without people feeling uncomfortable, feeling for some reason that we are asking for something that is not deserved, or something that is not to repair what was created. And what we've seen, and I specifically want to talk about black New Yorkers who have been here for generations, who have seen other communities come and benefit from the hard work that they've put in on the backs of the struggles that they've made, and they're still struggling while they see other communities coming, and that leads to division unnecessarily. So it is important that we understand we have everything we need for everyone that is here, but people's anger are valid. And so it is right to put out a report like this. I'm really hoping that New Yorkers who are watching this, this is not a condemnation of any one New Yorker, black, white, brown, because none of us created this system. But all of us have to decide to change the system the way it is. And I want to be clear that I understand there are wealthy black New Yorkers and there are poor white New Yorkers. But we shouldn't let individual accomplishments take away the community impact. And so I see that happen.
So he's saying that basically don't point out rich black people because that messes up our whole narrative. That messes up our whole narrative if you point out rich black people and poor white people.
All the time, there is a communal impact. And if we are going to address it, we have to be honest about it. Because when communities like black communities who have been dealing with issues for a very long time, when that community does better, everybody does better. Because the systems that are designed to keep them down keep a whole lot of people behind as well, and we see that happening. So instead of allowing leaders to feed our biases and to point to other people and say you're the reason why something's not happening, a plan like this can lay out a framework that says everybody has a right to be here, everybody has a right to thrive, and we're going to knock down the systems that are different for everyone, but we're going to recognize those systems that are keeping them behind and put in policies that change decades and decades of purposeful harm that is done by race. Thank you so much. Peace and blessing, love and light to you all.
See what I'm saying? That's like the keynote of his speech, that the harm is purposeful. It's all purposeful. That there's no other explanation as to why black people aren't doing better than white people other than there's a purposeful, systematic oppression of black people in a city where 75 or 70% of the people are non-white. And Asians are among the highest earning people in the city. Yeah, we've heard it all before, but it's like, okay, but how do we get past this argument, you know? Because I can show you the statistics, right? I can show you the SAT statistics showing in New York, these are from New York, showing that, you know, basically Asian people and white people score the highest, and then black people and Hispanic people are pretty close, but Hispanic people are slightly higher, right? And then if you look at the income levels for New York City, it's basically the same thing, right? Okay, white people do out-earn Asian people for some reason. And then black people and Hispanic people are basically the same. Hispanic people are a little bit slightly higher than black people, right? It seems like a simple explanation to me that, you know, the better you could do at school, then the better you're going to be able to do in the job market. It seems like a very simple, straightforward explanation, not a huge like conspiracy or anything like that, right? You just look at that, and then you say, okay, black people are getting a little bit less than white people, and it's not even that much of a difference. I mean, it's like 923 to 1,100, so it's like 200. It's like about a 200-point difference, almost 200 points, but not quite. Right. So here's this last thing. This is basically how they're calculating this whole, like, whatever it is, the true cost of living. Right. Where they're saying 62% of New Yorkers don't meet the threshold. Right. But the threshold that they're setting is incredibly high. Right. See, it's a $159,000 threshold. Right. So basically what they're saying is that anyone who makes less than $159,000 and lives in New York City is entitled to receive these benefits. If you're black or Latino, then you're entitled to receive these benefits that they're going to basically use AI and demographic research, right, to analyze the ratio between the different disparity ratio between the two groups, and then take the money from the richer group and give it to the poorer group. Basic communism, right? So this is basically, I put this in the description, this is how they're basing their whole, this is like basically what their whole worldview is based off of. The fact that these like wage gaps exist, and then instead of accepting that the wage gaps are caused by disparities in education level and income level based on education level, they're going to go straight to it's race, it's historical, racial discrimination that didn't allow black people to ever save up money. Because that's basically what they're saying here, is that really the main gap, they're not saying that New Yorkers can't afford to live, because obviously if 62% of people couldn't afford to live, then the 62% of people would be homeless, right? Or 62% of people, they would say 62% of families are going without meals or water or something like that. So it's not that. Really what they're saying is that people don't have economic stability, meaning that they can't save money, which definitely is a problem. And I think that this is going to be one of the sticking points for Republicans coming up in the next election, because Trump is now seen as, ridiculously corrupt when it comes to money. When with the whole like new like pump and dump stuff with the crypto, he's like ruining the image of crypto, because it's hard enough to defend crypto already, and then you got Trump coming in and doing pump and dump schemes and stuff like that. And people are like, look, I'd like to save up a little money. I see all these other people doing all this other stuff on Instagram and on Facebook or whatever, right? And then they're like, I'm barely making it. I can barely, they keep raising the price of rent and all this other stuff. And Trump, that's why everyone was voting for Trump last time. That's why he won the populist election, right? Because people thought he's a good businessman, maybe he can fix the economy, but he clearly didn't. And now people are saying, well, hey, I guess the socialism thing sounds good. They're going to tax the rich, they're going to give some to me, and Republicans really don't have anybody to blame but themselves for this specific situation of the change of perception that the Republican Party had for a little while, that they were the party of the working class. Trump kind of messed that up. So I can see why people are voting for it, but obviously, the amount of money and taxes that rich people would produce wouldn't even be enough to like cover like a week's worth of the city's operational costs anyway. It's just about taxing rich people so they have no like political power, because they're communists. It's obvious they're communists. They're talking about like reproducing the like what's it called, like the injustices. It's like they're just using like coded communist language. Like even in that speech, the guy was saying, oh, we need to give it to everyone so that everybody has stuff in the city. You mean take from each according to his need or whatever? It's like they're just masking the communist stuff, right? where it's like, it's not about race, but we just have a racial equity office. What was the other? There was one other thing that they did where it's like, oh, it's not racial. They changed the preamble to the city charter. Like they're just going full communist. So yeah, that's just like a preliminary look at it. I mean, you can basically see what's going on here. He goes on public. He says, oh, it's not about race. It's just about helping poor people. But then when you actually look at it, it's like, well, there's a lot of poor white people, but we're not going to help them at all. It's only about helping Latinos and Black people, basically, at the expense of white people. And then they're trying to pretend like it's not about that. And then on top of it, they're using like AI and stuff to scan everybody's financial transactions and how much money they make. And then they use that to create some type of ratio to decide how much money you need to give to poor people. But only poor Black or Latino people, because poor white people aren't allowed to get anything. So that's the video. The links are all in the description. Thanks for watching. If you did, have a good day and peace.